Welcome back to How to Invest in Commercial Real Estate, and we are back today with another exciting topic that is actually one we came up with from an incident that happened recently. But before we get into that, we wanted to talk about something new and exciting on the Criterion front. And for a lot of our investors is we funded this Kitty Academy redevelopment fund a few months ago. And in that fund, we went and bought 2 existing Kitty Academies. And the goal was to remodel them and sell them within a year to a year and a half. Well, both of those Kitty Academies have been remodeled. Both of the tenants are in. The leases were signed beforehand. And those sales offering memorandums are done, and we are sending both of those deals out to market, and we are expecting great sales proceeds to come from that.
Yeah, excited to get both of those done.
Way faster than we thought to.
Do you have any timing information?
They'll hit the market now. We thought it was going to be the first quarter of next month or the first quarter of next year. So now, realistically, they'll probably sell in the beginning of the second quarter, maybe into the first quarter of next year. And then all of that equity will be distributed back to the investors. And it should be a slam dunk of a deal. We won't talk about returns yet, but it's looking absolutely great. So we're excited about that.
And we got to find new deals to put that money to work. That's the challenging part in today's market.
Yeah. Definitely way easier said than done. We were talking about this right before the show, but I'm quoting out a deal right now, and my rate today, right, like December 20 or October 26th, 27th, whatever. The rate today is 6.5%. 6.5%. It's prime plus a quarter.
Yeah, about to go to 7.25.
Next week, it's going to 7.25, and nobody's going to lock it beforehand.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a lot of the challenges that you're seeing in today's world. When you think about it, I mean, just to have neutral leverage on a deal, you would need to go out and find a 7.25 cap, right? So an 8 cap, you're basically making no money at all in cash flow. You're paying down some debt and hoping to refi the rate lower. So it's really stalling things out. But anyway, we won't spend too much time on that. A couple weeks ago, we had this crazy clip of a U-Haul truck driving through our building. And that is obviously kind of a logistic nightmare because you have to figure out who's responsible for this, right? Like, and your first reaction may be, oh, you're the building owner, you're responsible for it. But our initial thought, which we're going to get into, is there's a lot of other people at fault here, right?
Yeah, right.
Like the truck driver.
There may be just one person at fault. There may be a lot of other people responsible for fixing it.
Okay,
right?
Yep, that's a valid point. That's a valid point. It's obviously
we're not just going to go blame a bunch of people for a U-Haul truck driving into our building, but we may make some people pay for it.
Yeah, we want to look at the driver. We want to look at the owner. Since it was a U-Haul, the driver didn't own the car, so then we look at U-Haul. So there's lots of places to look.
By the way, it turns out when you put some music to a truck slamming into a building, you get more views.
Yeah, that's right. Let's do that some more.
Anybody wanting to run a U-Haul, we've got plenty of buildings to run into.
Braden, are you sure you weren't driving that car just for increased viewership?
Yeah,
I really just took one for the team. But anyway, getting back to that, when this incident happened, we had to go to that property, we had to go to that tenant's file, and we pulled their lease and their lease abstract, or a lease brief, as some people may call it. And why we do that is because we need to figure out who's responsible for fixing this, right? We're going to claim on all the insurances available, but there's certain things that a tenant may be and their lease is specifically responsible for fixing.
Well, there's different parts to this too, right? Remember, he hit kind of the block in front, then he shattered the window.
Right.
He ruined some brickwork. So it's possible that different parties are responsible for different parts of this accident, right?
Yeah, and another thing that just happened at these same properties, we had to replace an HVAC unit. So in the Dollar General suite, they have a specific paragraph in their lease that says any repairs or replacement cost to our HVAC unit over $1,500 per incident is the responsibility of the landlord. Well, we had a $12,000 part break. So now we're looking at replacing a $20,000 HVAC unit, and we need to be able to quickly go to their file and figure out who is responsible for this, because some of these leases can be, 30 plus pages. They can be renewed over 30 years potentially. So there could be a lot of documents in there, and you want to be able to know immediately who is responsible for this.
Yeah, but more important to going and checking who's responsible right now, that got us thinking for the show today, is how do we go through and alert people on what kind of instances are going to hurt them before they buy? Because you need to not know, once you buy, it's one thing to figure out who's going to pay for it, but how are you building your model when you're evaluating a purchase? All of this comes into play. And so that's what brought us to the topic today.
Yeah. Great point. So since you brought that up, when is the time to do this? When do you do your first lease abstract? When do you read the lease at your point in buying the deal?
Yeah, and let's call it, we're talking about lease audits. That's what in the industry, it's called lease audits. And so for us, I would say you don't have to do a lease audit before you get the project under contract. But after you get it under contract and before your money goes non-refundable, you're going to want to do a lease audit on the entire rent roll.
Okay. So why wouldn't you do it beforehand? Because they're probably just listing something and you're probably just assuming it's true.
Well, for one thing, I'm thinking you just said some of these leases are 30 pages long and you have maybe 20 tenants. I mean, I don't know that you have time to do that before.
So it's just not practical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the offering memorandum, you will be getting a rent roll, and that will have a few of the really high level key points from the leases. You'll have the rent, and you'll have when it started and when it terminates. The main points, and kind of on a high level, who's paying triple nets or who's a gross lease. That gives you enough information to go ahead and make an offer and kind of make an evaluation of the value of the property.
Plus, they're probably not just giving out everyone their leases without a signed contract, right? Like it's probably a deliverable in the contract. So we're in contract on this new deal. We found, we've got this information, and now we need to go read the leases and figure out if it's actually true, right? Up until this point, they've just shown us a bunch of numbers and said, hey, it makes X dollars. You can't just believe that, right? You have to go read the lease. You have to build your own model. You have to build your own budget and see, here's the contractual money according to these leases that comes in. And if it's different, it's a great opportunity to say, hey, Mr. Seller, I have something different. Help me get to what you have. So you have to read it, right?
Yeah, and I'll say, what if you're asking yourself, well, man, I don't feel comfortable. Reading a 40-page lease and catching everything. There's good news is there's third-party companies that will do the lease audit for you. And they're pretty reasonable on cost.
And that's all they do is lease audits?
Well, it may not be all they do, but it'll be a service that they can provide. Okay. And we've used a third-party lease auditor. It wasn't a company necessarily, but it was someone that was in the business, in the industry that we trusted that could read the lease and build the audit page that shows us everything that we're responsible for.
And ballpark, what might that cost? I guess it depends on the number of leases or something, but how much would
we
something
paid
like
per hour, like $100 an hour.
Okay.
So cheaper
very
than
reasonable.
Kind of almost on the level of an accountant, way cheaper than an attorney.
And then they give you a summary of what they found. Is that right?
It's typically a one-page document. So you're consolidating a lot of pages into one page, and then they'll have the important points that we're going to go through here in a minute of what we may look for in a lease audit. But they're going to have those points listed out, like HVAC repair or replacement. And it's going to make a quick note just so you know who's responsible, like LL responsible for replacement, tenant responsible for repair. And then it typically has a reference of where that is in the lease. Okay. And again, you don't want to just operate off of your lease briefs, right? Because we're all humans. We make mistakes. Things get transcribed. Things get sold. So that's why that reference is so important, because at that point, before I spend $20,000, I'm going to go back to that lease and double check that reference mark and just make sure.
All right, so let me ask you a question. So it seems to me like we've talked about multi-tenant retail lease audits at this point. What about multifamily? Do people do lease audits, or is that easier because every lease is the same other than maybe the time, the term, and the rate?
That's a great question.
What do you do?
They are very different. Multifamily is, let's say it's a 250-unit apartment complex. The great thing about those leases is typically they will be on an identical lease. Everyone's on it, the exact same lease. And so you don't have different businesses negotiating different terms. You have people that are just agreeing to whatever the apartment complex lease says. And you're really just...
Nobody negotiates those, by the way.
Very rarely would someone ever negotiate something in an apartment lease.
Right.
And so all you're doing there, it's a lease audit, but you're really just... it's more verification. We want to know, okay, they say they're 92% occupied. Let's verify that they are 92% occupied. Let's look at all the leases, make sure there's a valid name. Let's verify the start date, the end date, and a security deposit. And really, that's all you're doing on a multifamily lease audit.
Okay.
Way different, though, when it comes to retail and office and maybe even industrial, because you're dealing with businesses and more common areas where the tenants are going to share in the responsibility of the upkeep, where an apartment, it's just not the case. If things break, they're calling you, you're fixing it.
Another example you might ask is single tenant deals. There's a lot of single tenant deals, and a lot of bigger institutional investors like high credit single tenant deals like a Chick-fil-A, or even our pads we sold in Wichita, that person wants to know that the tenants are taking care of everything. There's no responsibility for them. They don't have to pay taxes. They don't have to do insurance. A lot of those things can be built in a lease where the tenant gets the tax bill and pays it directly. The tenant insures the building itself and you're just getting verification. The tenant is handling the common area maintenance and they're sending you a report of what they paid. So
nice and clean, triple net. Even some of those can be called absolute net, where there just isn't any landlord responsibilities. But it's easy because you only have one tenant and they own the whole, or they don't own it, but they lease the whole premises. So you don't have any shared maintenance, any shared plumbing, electrical, parking lot that you have to divvy up. Who's responsible and who's paying for all this?
Okay,
Yeah.
let's get to the main points that you would look for. What are the main things that you would look for in a lease audit for multi-tenant retail?
No, the first thing that we're doing is we're verifying term and rent. And so, as we build our model, we're trying to get to a net operating income, and we're trying to verify that because they've obviously pitched an NOI to us.
Yep.
So the first thing we're doing is, okay, are the tenants there? Is it a valid lease in place? What are they paying? And when did they start and when does it end?
So that can pretty well tell you if the NOI that they suggested is correct, right?
It's more. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was going to say it's more in the triple nets.
Well, yeah,
that
so
you
it's
find
more
the
of
discrepancies.
a gross rent you can verify from that. You're getting the gross rent from the rent they're paying, and if they're in there. But really, it's once you get into the expenses and the responsibilities, you start chipping away at that NOI depending on who's paying for what.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, next, and it's number 2 on our list, is verifying, well, I'm going to call it triple nets versus gross lease. And most likely, the leases are somewhere in between those two. So is the tenant paying their full share of triple nets? Let's talk about what that means real quick.
Yeah, so this is a big thing that I find a lot is when you're looking through an OM, they're trying to be short and simple and sweet. So they're just calling it a triple net lease. They're not detailing it out, saying there's a 5% CAM cap. Well, a CAM cap means that year over year, your CAM dollars, common area maintenance dollars, you can't spend more than 5% or whatever percentage they assign than the previous year. Sometimes it's cumulative, sometimes it's not cumulative, so you can dig into that even more. But at face value, it just looks like a triple net lease, and you can say, okay, they pay 5% of the expenses no matter what the expenses are, when in reality, it's so much higher now, and they've been capped that really they're not paying 5% or whatever their proportionate share is. They're paying a significantly lower amount, and you've got some slippage there in your actual expenses versus what you're being reimbursed.
All right, and we always try to bring examples for people that so they'll understand what we're talking about. So let's say that you're buying a $5 million building, and it says triple nets on the leases, but they have a 5% CAM cap. And let's just not call it CAM. Let's say it's 5% triple net cap.
Right.
And so then you find out after you close that the previous owner, he had purchased that building for $2 million.
Yeah.
And so the real estate taxes and the insurance are really low. Mm-hmm. But you buy it for $5 million. Now the tax is more than doubled. And you think you're just going to pass on that expense to your tenants. And when you send your tenants the bill for the new higher taxes, which is more than double, they say, nope, we're going to pay taxes on the $2 million level plus 5% increase because our lease allows us a maximum of 5% a year. And so you're totally screwed. Your NOI isn't going to be what you thought it was.
You're totally screwed.
Yeah. It's over. You're going to quit investing. You're going to give it up. No, but that's an example of the caps. You have to make sure that the caps don't come out and bite you. You don't want to see caps, but if you do see them, you want them on actual common area maintenance, and you want them exclusive of real estate taxes and insurance and other things that can take big swings year to year.
Okay. Last note I would add is an administrative fee. A lot of the times when we're doing a lease renewal or on our new lease, we put an administrative fee of 5, 10, 15% of whatever the triple net costs were that we bill in addition to that for facilitating the payment and the negotiation and everything like that. So you may be looking for those. You may be looking, maybe that's upside value for you that you can add those. Just something to note.
All right, next one we're going to talk about is, I'll call it outs. You have all these great leases, and it says they're paying this rent, and you're going to make all kinds of money. But if certain trigger events allow those tenants to just get out of their lease, then you don't really have the guaranteed income stream you thought you had or you thought you were going to buy.
This just happened on our Salad and Go deal in Owasso. It's 15-year lease, but they have an out in year 10. What's the out in year 10 for? Oh, just if they want it. So we have a 10-year lease.
You have absolutely. You have a 10-year lease.
With a
You do
5-year
not
option.
have a 15-year lease.
So and it sounds ridiculous, but they're there. A lot of tenants have them there. Or I'll do this renewal, but I want a month out in month 12. I mean,
So examples that you're looking for, some outs may be if the occupancy of the entire center falls below a certain amount. So now you're getting hurt, let's say,
Co-tenancy.
because of the economy. Tenants left, and then that gives other tenants the ability to leave, and it'll devastate your deal.
Yeah.
That's one. Another one, if the anchor goes out, that could be an out.
it could just be a specific tenant. Like, hey, if it could be a tenant not in your shopping center. Like, hey, if the Walmart next door goes
yeah.
dark,
Yeah.
I'm out. You'll see that a lot in the shadow anchored Walmart deals, like your Cato, your GameStop, it's the same tenant.
Some outs could be if our sales don't achieve a certain number, then they'll say, hey, I'm not meeting sales, and this was a criteria, I'm out. So a lot of different ways that tenants can get out. Of course, as landlords, if I was negotiating these leases, I wouldn't budge on virtually any of this stuff. Right. I don't know what all the motivations are of landlords that agree to some of these things, but they're in there, and you got to make sure that you're catching it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just the nature of a lease audit or an offering memorandum, they're consolidating 40 pages to one page or less than a page. Sometimes it's like one line in the offering memorandum. So you can't expect for them to consolidate all of this information for you in the offering memorandum. It's not like people are trying to hide it from you, even though sometimes they are.
Yeah, they're just not putting all of that in.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked about triple net leases, and that's more, we talked about the triple net, your share of triple net expenses, which those are ongoing expenses like parking lot sweeping and landscaping and things, common area electric. But you need to check the leases for who pays for the ongoing maintenance items. And specifically, like we talked about with the Dollar General, is we have the HVAC go out. Sometimes the tenant pays for that. Sometimes the landlord pays for it. In that case, the tenant pays for some of it and the landlord pays for most of it. But that will eat into your budget because you're going to have those things happen, especially if you have older HVACs. Sometimes plumbing isn't included. So you need to check on what I'll call ongoing maintenance. Who's responsible for ongoing maintenance or things outside of the normal triple net budget?
And you may be thinking, like, Braden, you just said you had to replace a $20,000 HVAC unit for Dollar General on a property you just bought. Do you guys not take your own advice? What are you idiots? How did you not know? And what I would say is we bought that property on auction, right? Mm-hmm. So we've talked about auction purchases before, and these are the risks that you really run into when you buy a property on auction because you don't get to do your own inspections. You don't have time to do anything. Everything is rushed. And you get stuck with what you bought. It's very as is. So yeah,
in an auction, you wouldn't necessarily see all the leases first.
You would see all the leases, but even if I saw that, how am I supposed to know that their HVAC unit is about to go out?
Yeah,
I have no idea.
I think there was a property condition report, but that's okay. I mean, we did as much due diligence as we could, and then you have to reserve money. It's not like we can rewrite that lease. We can't change it. But the important thing of going through this list that we're talking about today is that you can accurately evaluate the deal, and you build your budget based on the risks in the lease audits.
Yeah.
Because once again, you don't know when an HVAC is going to go out.
Right.
But you may allocate capital for the what ifs. Or let's say a parking lot, it's in need of repair. You don't know when it's going to need repaired or replaced, but you may put a yearly budget in there if the landlord's responsible and the tenants aren't going to pay for that. So that's all we're talking about here is just going in, eyes wide open, and building an appropriate budget to make sure you have some of this stuff
That's what we
covered.
did in that particular example is we had a good reserve, and it's not going to, it's not a huge surprise. We've got the money to cover it. So
All right, let's keep moving. Restricted use. Not a huge deal, but a lot of tenants, they'll go in and then they'll restrict what you can put into the vacant units if it conflicts with their business.
Yeah.
So that's something you need to be aware of. If you say, hey, I've got all this vacant space, I'm going to go lease it up, you need to be aware of what you can and can't put in there. It may make it harder to lease up than you think it would.
I've got a great example for this one. So we bought Plaza West back in January, multi-tenant strip center. After we bought it, we come to this problem of there's a rent-a-center and a furniture sales store. They just sell furniture. Well, Rent-A-Center has an exclusive use for the financing of consumer goods. Not financing furniture, the financing of consumer goods. And the furniture sales store started financing or allowing people to pay installments on the furniture. And Rent-A-Center sent us a default letter and said, hey, you guys are in default of this section of our lease. There's another tenant renting furniture. And as a result of that, they're paying 50% rent. 50% rent. Ask me what I did.
What'd you do?
What'd you do, Braden?
Well, I had two options the way I see it. I could kick out the other tenant because they just flat out refused to stop financing their furniture. So I could kick them out, and they said they would leave. But Rent-A-Center's 50% payment is less of a loss than kicking out the furniture sales store. So we're literally just riding a default, and I haven't figured out a way to get it cured yet.
That's interesting. We'll have to talk about solutions on that offline. I think we've covered most of it. I have a couple other here. CapEx, which I briefly mentioned. Once again, there's a lot of reoccurring expenses or maintenance issues, but that still may not cover who's paying for the roof, the structure, the parking lot. And obviously, tenants don't want to pay for those things because they may or may not be there 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But if it's in there, it's a huge win. So you need to understand at least what those risks are. It verifies a security deposit, which you need to know because it's something that the tenant will fight you on when they leave. And I think last one, which we can cover quickly here, is future increases in rent and option periods. And the future increases in rent is great. You'll be able to see those. But one thing is interesting is the option periods, because we've run into deals where on the surface it looked like a great deal. Let's say it was an 8.5 cap. I'm good to go. That's all I need. But then I looked further into the lease, and they have maybe 4 option periods with no rent increases. And so if that tenant stays and if they exercise their option, then that 8.5 cap slowly deteriorates into an 8, 7.5, 7 cap deal because I can't increase my rent over time. Mm-hmm. And other deals that I could compare it to, yeah, I can keep up with inflation and my income goes up. Or here, my income is going to stay the same. So that's the last one I think you should look out for.
Okay. Anyway, leases are super important. It's the lifeblood of the business. I mean, it's your contractual income. It can leave you exposed to lots of different risks that we just mentioned. So,
and I real quick, I don't do lease audits for us. I'm not a detailed guy. I understand it, but I want other people to do it because by nature I'm going to miss something. So I'd much rather pay someone to do it or someone on my staff to do it, and then I review that. So you don't have to do it personally. You just need to make sure that you understand where the risks are and make sure it's getting done by somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, anyway, I think that is it for today's show, and we will catch you guys next week on how to invest in commercial real estate.
Thanks, guys.